Salam alaikum. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Kena Informative Talk with Lerato and Cherise.
Hi.
Hi. How are you?
Good, and you?
I'm good, good. What are we talking about today?
Well, today, another lovely subject which I love digging into is executive functioning disorder or executive dysfunction. So what that basically is, it's not a diagnosis, but it is a symptom linked to a diagnosis or a neurological issue, like ADHD, for instance. That's one of the things that they struggle with. And what this is it disrupts the brain of the ability of the brain to control thoughts, emotions, and even behavior. So it's actually interesting that research shows that the part of the brain that is responsible for this and is also the last part of the brain that develops is the prefrontal cortex. So according to research, it shows that that's the last part of the brain that develops. And usually with people with ADHD or this executive functioning disorder, it takes 30%. It's 30% more delayed in development. And this causes them to come across as very immature.
But lazy also. Yeah, sure.
So we'll
this one is really quite an interesting one, I must say. For me, when we were doing research and we were just doing prep, it really caught my attention because we all have executive function and it just helps us on a daily basis making decisions. I would say with our thoughts, feelings, everything. So it was really intriguing, and it helps us to actually understand each other, and it helps us to actually be productive daily. So it is quite an interesting one. So we'll just get on to the symptoms again. How do we see it? Because someone will say, okay, I'm a very productive person. I make sure I go to school or go to work, I come back, so I'm productive. What do you mean that I might have executive function disorder?
Yeah, it is quite interesting. And another thing that I just thought of now was, do you remember when we did the ADHD discussion? There was a lot of symptoms listed there, and this one was one of them.
Yeah.
And if we look at the depth of just this one, it just makes you realize again the struggles that people have with these.
Sure.
It's got a lot of heaviness to it.
It is.
Yeah. So the symptoms of this is one of them is the cognitive process where they are very impulsive. So it's linked to their response inhibition. So they're very impulsive. Their working memory they struggle with working memory.
And then especially which is working memory is divided into two: the non-verbal working memory and the verbal working memory. So the non-verbal will actually be the pictures that they're able to process while they're looking at people, things, and the verbal one would be the information that they're receiving. So which is normally temporary, that one that, for instance, the teacher will give an instruction that, okay, today we're going to be learning about angles. Let's open to page 34. And then that's the instruction.
Yeah.
And then the picture is what the teacher is saying that they have to be thinking about angles at that time, or they're seeing angles on the board. And when they go to the page, and then they open page 84. And the teacher said, I said page 34. Like, no, you said 84. But it's because the processing of that information and the visual of that information, there was I would say, delay or something in their brain that has inhibited them to actually process that. So it's quite interesting.
Yeah, it is.
That's right. And while with the cognitive processing, while we're talking about it, it also talks about long-term and short-term goals when they have to set their long-term goals. And I remember you mentioned something about it, that they sometimes feel like, I can't do if they have to write an essay,
Yes.
because it is, I would say, a long-term goal in terms of how they go, the length of it, how big it is, how would we require it.
This is quite fascinating because they usually the enthusiasm is there with setting goals, but they usually set unrealistic goals for themselves. And once they dive into the planning, they realize, oh, wait a minute, this is not what I wanted to do. And the other one was they're also very impulsive with setting goals.
Yeah, that is quite fascinating. And we were talking about it, that it also affects their self-motivation, because now if they're unable to achieve their long-term goals, then they feel like they're failures. They feel like they cannot do anything, and they're incompetent. And it really, really affects their emotional regulation.
And it snowballs from there, because then they have this self-worth that is not good. They're not good enough, you know. They become insecure about things. It just snowballs from there. And then anxiety starts building up, so it just gets worse and worse.
And again, I'm thinking they start to be people's pleasers, because they always want to please the teacher, because they know that they're always incapable of doing what they're expected, and which that is one of the killers of especially the teenagers, because that's where you just want to please everyone around you. And what they're doing, they're doing it to feel better and and I would say understand their self-worth when they get gratification and get praises, where else it shouldn't be like that. So it is really sad. And
that is.
Okay, the next one would be self-awareness. Self-awareness also touches on what we've spoken about right now, them understanding themselves and being people pleasers and all of that. It also touches on that, because they are not aware of themselves, of who they are. They are aware of themselves, what they are not and what they should be. And for them, that causes also a feeling of failure, which is touches on emotional regulation.
And that's very dangerous to reach that.
I
mean, they already have these external struggles, and that's what follows now. As we spoke earlier on about the external and the internal struggles. So already having this executive functioning disorder and having to complete tasks is already a struggle externally as it is. So along with that goes the internal struggles, that sense of, oh no, I can't do this, or am I going to get this right? Am I going to get into trouble? So all these thoughts go through their mind, you know, and it's having that emotional self-regulation.
It's quite really sad, and that's where you find kids having depression, anxiety, and also cutting themselves because of all of these things. And remember that all of this is happening, the things that are said about them. You're lazy, you're naughty, you're not listening, all of these things, and that also confirms their thoughts, confirms their feeling, and they start actually thinking that they are unworthy.
So we have to be very careful working with these students. They're special, and there's just a different way. Luckily there are ways to help with this. You know, there are tips and there are tricks, which we'll get into next. Before we do, there's one more thing, as you mentioned, the planning and organization. Those are also things, and problem solving.
Solving
is another thing that they struggle with.
Something that you would expect them to solve easily, they will need validation for you to say, yes, you can do this. And obviously that you get frustrated as a parent or as a teacher that you could have done this, you don't need me to validate that. So it really becomes a problem with them also being proactive in situations, because they want validation constantly. They want to be told, yes, you can do that, or they need to be reminded how to solve the problem, you know. So I know that there are also students that they'll come in the classroom and sit down. They see that they don't have their laptops out, they don't have their books. They'll actually wait for the teacher to come in and tell them that.
Give them the instruction.
You know. If they see on the board that the teacher is talking about a slide that is not up, they'll just keep quiet and wait for the teacher. Maybe after 10 minutes, if the teacher had said that, let's write this, and obviously that needs problem problem
Yeah.
skills solving that. Okay, the teacher said we must write about 5 goals, and
Yeah.
there are no goals on the board. Others are already went to their devices to find it, and they've started working, but they will just wait and sit there.
Yeah.
And the teacher said, no, there's no
And that's something they find really, really hard, which is exactly the part of the brain where that whole thing where you go from goal setting to goal getting, that's where the problem comes in. They don't know how to do that. They don't know how to set goals, how to think, because it's like a blur in their brains. They don't know what's coming, what's happening at all.
And the process of getting there,
Yes.
that's one thing that it's sometimes they do have a goal. They, like we mentioned about writing an essay. They know they have to write an essay, but they don't know how they will write it. They don't know how to start it. And with older people that or adults, they'll struggle maybe starting writing an email. How do I know what I want to write, but I don't know how to write it?
How to start.
How to start,
Yes.
you know,
Yes.
particularly. So it's how to get to the goal, the process of it, and having those steps for them and understanding. And I'm already touching on tips now.
Yes, which is linked to that. And there are some really nice tips. I actually watched a lovely YouTube video, which we'll share in the end, that has to do with, it actually explains it in a form of an obstacle, having your start line, your obstacles that are lying ahead, and then a finish line. And this guy it's actually a guy that's studied ADHD, and he's a doctor. He's got a book out, how to coach ADHD. And he explained that what you need to do is actually have a structure for these people that struggle with executive functioning. Is you have to have a structure for them. And how to do this is a simple goal planning structure, where your start line is what is your goal. Then focusing on your finish line, and then your second question is why this goal, because if you say why and they explain why, that will give the motivation as to why they're choosing this goal. And then the third thing was looking at what you're going to benefit by doing this goal, and what you're going to benefit if you don't do this goal. Then what is it going to cost you to complete this goal, and what are you going to lose by not completing this goal? So creating a visual for them and making them think further, which is something they also struggle with, is thinking of the consequences and not thinking of the consequences. What do you reap from this? Making them think of those things helps them to set these goals. So this is a great structure to have. And then the last part is looking at the obstacles that lie ahead between the finish and the start line, because making them think of what issues or what obstacles may I face. And it's a if-then scenario. So if this happens, then this is how I'm going to tackle it. So that structure and making them think of that structure already helps them with the planning of any goals.
Sure. That is so incredible. And I remember there's also a doctor, we'll put the video down in our description box, that spoke about context, that executive functioning, kids would normally want context. For instance, they made this experiment that, so it was marshmallows. So they would get kids in a room and put a marshmallow. And then and then they will tell them that the context will be, don't eat this marshmallow because your other friends in the same group like you, so they'll give them t-shirts, like you're in a group, you're in a green, for instance, color, the t-shirt is green, you're in a green group, they all waited, and because they waited, they got 2 marshmallows. So if you eat this one, then you don't get the other marshmallow. So the context comes in with motivation, motivating them to do that. So then she will leave the room and come back later. And then obviously if they didn't eat the marshmallow, they will then get another marshmallow. They have 2. Then they will,
so hard,
exactly,
for them.
It's so hard. But most of them waited because of the context, the motivation behind it, and seeing they actually had pictures of another child wearing a green t-shirt and having two marshmallows. And the one with the red t-shirt, that this is the group that did not wait, they got one. So obviously, as a child, you think, oh, I don't want one, I want two. But obviously, you have to wait.
Yeah.
And the doctor was saying that it was interesting that now they've started finding things to distract themselves from eating it. And that would be inhibition of self-control, controlling their will at that time and their emotion and how they feel that time. They'll start singing. The other one literally will look away, start fiddling, not to look the marshmallow.
No temptation.
Like, no temptation. I'm waiting for the other one. And it was quite interesting that if the kids have context of what they're doing, then they're motivated more and they get to understand themselves and reach the goal that they have to, instead of saying, do your homework because you have to. So context does really matter, and it's quite important for us as teachers and parents to have that context and have those discussions with kids. Why do I go to school? Because they'll ask you, why should I do it? Why? The why generation.
Yeah. Which is not a bad thing, but having a concrete because it's a good idea.
Exactly. Because they can Google anything, what you say after that. So you really have to have a good answer to that. And timers, they also can use timers for them. It worked well for my student that had ADHD and also exclusive dysfunction, which we would put a timer to say that, okay, for 5 minutes, we'll focus on this task, and then after 5 minutes, you have a 1 minute break. And it really did help, although there are pros and cons around timers, so obviously use it in caution. And charts, we spoke about them also on our previous session of visual maps, that it would really help them to lists and
visual
to-do lists and the things that they need to do. It helps them to do their work. So
and again, collaboration from all the relevant participants, teachers, parents, professionals, that all really helps as well. Because it's not just at school, for instance. I mean, school is a big one, but I'm just using an example now. If a child has a chalk chart at home, they need to be able to know where to start. Otherwise, it's, where do I start cleaning up? What do I pack up first? So it's the same thing at home as well. So everything together could make a big difference.
And a routine also.
Yes, true.
Routine, they thrive on routine because they know what to expect and they do them. It becomes religiously that I need to do this. So routine also really helps, especially at home and even at school. Even if you have a routine in a class where you know that after they're sitting down, they know they have to take out their laptops or their books, they have to take out their pens, write a date, and I know there's a fantastic teacher that I used to work with. She even had a song. For a while, after they start coming in the class, then they'll start singing, and then
that's nice.
And all the kids will start singing. While they're singing, they're already taking out
that's nice.
And writing and all of that, and it also helps. So you use it. I would say you use a method that will help for your kids, and and sometimes when you do it like that, it helps the whole class, and it helps them not to feel secluded, because if you have only a routine of telling them,
that's so true.
And then they think, oh, I'm different. Why are you not telling?
They get embarrassed. When they hit adolescence, they become more aware, so they do tend to get embarrassed. Like, I don't want to use this tool because no other kids using it. So they do tend to. So they can get that. That's amazing that they could get the whole class.
Class to do that. So in activities where you can get the whole class to do it, while you know that you are helping them, they definitely work. Because I know with kids, some of the kids that are older, they would not like having a learning support sitting next to them in the class, because why are you sitting next to me? The rest of
I don't need help.
I don't need help.
I know.
So one of the strategies I would tend to go to other kids in the class, and then they will think that I'm helping the rest of the class. But
that's a good way.
Although it tends to be a bit tricky, because sometimes
You have to
even
stay longer.
yeah, you have to stay longer with other kids, and obviously that child that you're in that class would be a priority according to the setup of the school. Maybe the LSA is paid, or it's the school LSA. So yeah, there is a fine line also in trying to include them and making them understand that you're there to help them.
It's so nice to see that teacher's perspective on that, because I mean, it could really be challenging to do all these things and get everything done in the time frame that you've been given.
Yeah,
you know, it's amazing.
Right.
I take my hat off, because honestly, we thank teachers like you guys. Honestly,
thank you.
You make such a big difference.
Thank you. And you are amazing parent like you. They really help us a lot, because with your information and how you support your Brendan and other parents that support their kids, it really makes it easier for us, because if parents are aware of what their kids are going through, and we are aware, we are able to form a team and help them to achieve and thrive.
That's true.
That's a wrap for today, guys. It was really, really a wonderful and a informative talk today. It was really an informative talk. Honestly, personally, I've learned quite a lot as a teacher and as a mother also. I truly, truly appreciate this talk. And we have YouTube videos, links, and more information down below. Please check them out for more information that would really help you. And thank you for tuning in. See you next week.